When we talk about the history of America, the first names that often come to mind are the towering figures of George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and others. Their stories are told and retold in classrooms, books, and documentaries. But how can the history of a place truly be complete without acknowledging its original inhabitants, the Native Americans? For centuries before the arrival of European settlers, Native American tribes thrived across the vast landscape that we now call the United States. They had their own complex societies, spiritual beliefs, and intricate systems of governance. Then, everything changed. The moment the Europeans landed on American shores, the indigenous people found themselves facing a brutal and unrelenting threat. Their very existence was at stake. As the settlers expanded their reach, building colonies and claiming more land, they encountered a big problem. The land they desired was already inhabited. Native Americans stood in their way. What followed was a series of desperate, bloody confrontations that would shape the future of the continent. To resist the European invaders, Native Americans adopted various strategies from warfare to diplomacy. They tried to drive them out, launching fierce attacks to defend their lands and their way of life. But to the settlers, these native warriors appeared to be primitive savages, terrifying, brutal, and untamable. The settlers feared them deeply, but fear alone wasn't enough to halt the relentless advance of colonization. Faced with the overwhelming power of European weapons and numbers, some tribes opted for peace. They signed treaties, hoping to share the land and live in harmony with the newcomers. These treaties promised coexistence and mutual respect, but the U.S. government, time and again, broke its promises. The ink on these agreements barely dried before the settlers and soldiers encroached further into native territory. Desperate, the Native Americans returned to warfare, achieving some successes. But despite their bravery and resilience, they lost. They lost battle after battle, and with each defeat, more and more of their sacred land was taken from them. In the end, almost all of their remaining territory was gone, and their people were forced into exile, displacement, and death. Today, we delve into the lives of some of the most influential Native American leaders and warriors who lived during the tumultuous era of the Wild West. These unsung heroes, though often overshadowed by the figures of European descent in American history, fought valiantly to protect their people, their lands, their rights, and their way of life. From the battlefields to the diplomatic tables, they left an indelible mark on history, even if their names are not as well known. But before we begin, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications, so you never miss an episode of Native Journal. Your support helps keep these important stories alive. Let's start with the story of Chief Black Kettle, a Southern Cheyenne leader who stood at the crossroads of peace and war. Known to his people as Moclavado, Black Kettle was a peacemaker who believed that diplomacy could be the path to survival. He married 4 times and fathered at least 17 children, but little is known about his early years. By 1861, Black Kettle had agreed to the Fort Wise Treaty, which relocated his people to a reserve in the Colorado area, near Sand Creek. However, peace was fragile, and trust in the government was even more so. On November 29, 1864, tragedy struck. John Chivington, the commander of the 3rd Colorado Volunteers, led a brutal assault on Black Kettle's camp near Fort Leon. Despite the chief's desperate attempts to signal peace by raising both a white flag and an American flag outside his lodge, Chivington's men opened fire. The Sand Creek Massacre unfolded with horrifying violence, as over 200 Cheyenne, men, women, and children, were slaughtered. One of Black Kettle's wives was shot 9 times but miraculously survived. The massacre was a defining moment in the U.S. government's violent treatment of Native Americans. In the aftermath, Black Kettle sought peace once again. He signed the Little Arkansas Treaty in October 1865, trading the Sand Creek Reserve for land in southwest Kansas. Then, in 1867, he agreed to the Medicine Lodge Treaty, which called for the relocation of his people to Indian Territory. But, as had become all too common, the promised supplies and protections never materialized. General Philip Sheridan, viewing the Native Americans as responsible for raids on settlements, ordered a winter campaign in 1868 to crush them. Sheridan's forces, led by the infamous Lt. Col. George Armstrong Custer, traced a raiding party's trail to Black Kettle's village on the Washita River. On November 27, 1868, Custer's 7th Cavalry launched a vicious attack, overrunning the village in a hail of gunfire. Black Kettle and his wife, Medicine Woman, tried to escape but were gunned down. The Battle of the Washita was another grim chapter in the story of Native American resistance. And though Black Kettle is now honored in modern-day Cheyenne, Oklahoma, for his efforts toward peace, his life ended in bloodshed. Another towering figure in Native American history is Attakullakulla, a Cherokee peace leader whose diplomacy defined much of the 18th century. Attakullakulla lived during a period of enormous hardship for the Cherokee people. The smallpox epidemic ravaged their towns, devastating entire communities. Crops failed, and food shortages became rampant. Meanwhile, European settlers continued to push deeper into Cherokee lands, claiming what wasn't theirs. Attakullakulla was one of 7 Cherokee envoys who, in 1730, traveled to establish a peace treaty with the British. This treaty was meant to ensure free trade between the Cherokee and the British, strengthening ties that might offer some security against the encroaching colonialists. But the challenges didn't end there. Attakullakulla's diplomacy extended far beyond the Cherokee-British relationship. He conducted intertribal diplomacy with non-Cherokee native peoples in the Ohio Valley, the South, and the Great Lakes region. His skills as a negotiator earned him both respect and criticism. The British often called him rogue, dishonest, and bothersome, but these dismissals failed to capture his brilliance. He wasn't to be underestimated. Through his leadership, the Cherokee gained access to trade goods, and his deft diplomacy helped the Cherokee adapt their traditional ways in the face of colonial pressures. His efforts enabled the Overhill Cherokee to preserve their political power and maintain a level of independence amid growing European dominance. One of the most notable leaders of the Cherokee Nation was John Ross, a man of mixed heritage who became a chief at a time of great turmoil. Though he was only 1/8 Cherokee, Ross led the Cherokee Nation from 1828 until his death in 1866. Ross owned property and slaves in North Carolina and often found himself straddling 2 worlds, acting as a middleman between the Cherokee people and U.S. government officials. By the 1820s, the Cherokee were in danger of being forcibly exiled from their lands. Ross fought against this, filing lawsuits and seeking justice for his people. Despite numerous court rulings that recognized the Cherokee's right to their land, the government never enforced these decisions. Ross's efforts went largely unappreciated, but he would ultimately lead his people on one of the darkest journeys in American history, the Trail of Tears. In 1838, the Cherokee were forced to march from their homelands to Oklahoma, a journey marked by suffering and death. It was a tragedy from which the Cherokee would never fully recover. And yet, despite the hardships faced by Native Americans, there were moments of triumph. One such triumph came in the form of Rachel Caroline Eden, the first known Native American woman to earn a Ph.D. in 1919. Eden was a member of the Cherokee Nation and dedicated her life to education and the preservation of her people's history. Her book on John Ross and the Cherokee Indians, published in 1914, drew national attention to the horrors of the Trail of Tears and the forced removal of her people. Eden's commitment to education stemmed from the matriarchal traditions of her Cherokee upbringing. She learned early on from her grandmother, a survivor of the Trail of Tears, about the importance of preserving history for future generations. Eden went on to teach at various institutions, including the Cherokee Female Seminary, and played a key role in establishing Native women's clubs in the 1920s and 1930s. Despite the racism she faced in academia, Eden's legacy in Native education endures. Finally, we must honor Drive. Susan LaFlèche Picot, who in 1889 became the first Native American woman to earn a medical degree. LaFlèche was a member of the Omaha tribe and dedicated her life to serving her people as a doctor, educator, and advocate. She graduated as valedictorian from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania and returned to her community to practice medicine. Dr. Picot's work was not just about treating the physical ailments of her patients. She also worked tirelessly to address the social and political issues that affected Native Americans. Her legacy as a healer and advocate lives on, a testament to the strength and determination of Native women throughout history. The following year, Drive. Susan LaFlèche Picot returned to her homeland, the Omaha tribe of Nebraska, where she became the sole physician appointed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. She had always intended to go back home, back to the people she loved and cared for. Becoming a doctor wasn't just a career choice for her, it was a deeply personal mission, one rooted in a desire to heal her community, to save them from the very diseases that settlers had brought upon them. Following the devastating outbreaks of measles and tuberculosis that ravaged the Omaha and other Native American tribes in the mid-19th century, LaFlèche-Picaud knew that these Euro-American diseases required Euro-American medical expertise. Western medicine, she believed, was the key to stopping the spread of these deadly illnesses. At first, LaFlèche-Picaud even supported the government's assimilation programs, such as the land allotment policy, which sought to divide tribally held lands into privately owned plots. She believed that this might help Native Americans integrate into a rapidly changing world. However, as the years passed and she continued her work as a physician and advocate, her perspective shifted. She began to see how these assimilation policies, which initially seemed like a potential solution, were in fact exacerbating the problems facing her people. The land allotment program, in particular, was eroding tribal sovereignty and weakening the communal bonds that had sustained the Omaha for generations. It was contradictory to her work as a healer. How could she truly help her people if they were losing not only their health but also their land, their culture, and their identity? As LaFlèche-Picaud worked tirelessly to improve healthcare for the Omaha, her frustration with the Bureau of Indian Affairs grew. She saw firsthand how the BIA's neglect and the continued encroachment of white settlers were directly contributing to the deteriorating health of her people. The BIA's healthcare system was woefully underfunded and understaffed, and the settlers brought not only diseases but also systemic inequalities that left Native communities without the resources they desperately needed. Determined to make a difference, LaFlèche-Picaud took matters into her own hands. She raised private funds and, in 1913, opened her own hospital, the first privately funded hospital for Native Americans. This hospital, located in Walt Hill, Nebraska, was a beacon of hope for the Omaha and neighboring tribes. It was a place where they could receive medical care without the prejudice and neglect they often encountered in government-run facilities. Tragically, Susan LaFlèche-Picaud, who had battled health issues for much of her life, passed away just 2 years later at the age of 50. Despite her untimely death, her legacy lived on. The hospital she founded continued to operate, a testament to her unwavering commitment to the health and well-being of her people. Another remarkable figure in Native American history is Suzette LaFlèche, a woman who, like her sister Susan, sought to make a difference through education and advocacy. Suzette LaFlèche, also known as Bright Eyes, was the daughter of Omaha Chief Joseph LaFlèche. Born into a time of great change and upheaval for Native Americans, Suzette was determined to fight for her people's rights. After attending college in New Jersey, she returned to Nebraska in 1875, hoping to teach on the Omaha Reservation. But despite her qualifications and her passion for education, her application was rejected simply because she wasn't white. This blatant racism sparked a fire in Suzette. She would not stand idly by and accept such injustice. She fought back, standing up for herself and demanding her right to teach. Her persistence paid off, and she eventually secured a teaching position. However, teaching was just the beginning of her advocacy career. Suzette LaFlèche would go on to become a tireless advocate for Native American rights, working closely with journalist Thomas Tibbles, whom she later married. Together, they supported the Ponca chief Standing Bear in his legal battle to return home and bury his son. Standing Bear's powerful courtroom speeches, interpreted by Suzette, led to the historic 1879 Supreme Court decision in Standing Bear v. Crook, which recognized Native Americans as persons under the law with the right to be respected as individuals. This was a groundbreaking victory, one that reverberated throughout the United States and marked a significant turning point in the fight for Native American rights. As an interpreter, writer, and activist, Suzette LaFlèche used her voice to amplify the stories and struggles of her people. She wrote passionately about the injustices Native Americans faced, including the horrific aftermath of the 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre. From Pine Ridge, she reported on the massacre for national newspapers, writing, "I am the only Indian speaking to the public through the press on behalf of the Indians. Her work was not limited to Native American causes. Suzette also advocated for farmers and other oppressed groups, giving speeches across Europe and writing columns in the Omaha World Herald. Through her work, she brought attention to the struggles of marginalized communities and worked tirelessly to overturn injustice. Another revered Native American leader was Edway Ganu Nind, a hereditary chief of the Ojibwe tribe. As the senior elder of the 7 Ojibwe clans, he was a staunch opponent of the Treaty of 1863, which forced the tribe to cede thousands of acres of land in the Red River Valley. For decades, Edway Ganu Nind fought against the encroachment of white settlers and the unjust policies of the U.S. government. In 1889, at the age of 80, he was once again at the forefront of negotiations. Representing his people in talks to redraw the boundaries of the Ojibwe reservation. His leadership and diplomacy were instrumental in securing a better deal for his people. For his efforts, he was presented with a 38-star American flag, a symbol of the respect he had earned from both his people and the U.S. government. Pontiac, another influential Native American leader, took a different approach. Born around the Detroit or Maumee River region, Pontiac rose to prominence among the Ottawa tribe by the time he was 30. His deep resentment toward the British, who had taken control of French forts after the French and Indian War, led him to launch a widespread rebellion in 1763. Pontiac's rebellion, as it came to be known, was a coordinated effort by multiple Native American tribes to resist British rule. Pontiac's forces attacked British forts and settlements across the Ohio Valley, dealing significant blows to the British military. However, Pontiac's leadership was not without controversy. Some Native American chiefs resented the influence he wielded, believing that he had been granted his title as chief by the British to further their own interests. In 1769, Pontiac was assassinated by a member of the Peoria tribe, bringing his rebellion to an end. Tecumseh, a Shawnee chief born in Ohio in the late 1760s, was another leader who sought to unite Native American tribes in resistance against the encroaching settlers. Tecumseh was a charismatic speaker, known for his passionate pleas for unity. He believed that the land belonged to all Native peoples and that no tribe had the right to sell any part of it to the United States. In 1809, when the Treaty of Fort Wayne ceded 2.5 million acres of native land to the U.S., Tecumseh was furious. He traveled across the country, urging tribes to join together in a pan-native confederation. Though his efforts ultimately came too late, Tecumseh's vision of native unity remains one of the most powerful symbols of resistance in Native American history. Tecumseh eventually allied with the British during the War of 1812 and died in battle in 1813. Sitting Bull, perhaps one of the most famous Native American leaders, was a Dakota chief known for his fierce defense of his people's land and way of life. Born in 1831, Sitting Bull became a leader of the Hunkpapa Lakota and gained a reputation for his uncompromising stance against white settlers and soldiers. His most famous victory came at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, where Sitting Bull and his warriors, alongside Crazy Horse, defeated General Custer's 7th Cavalry in a stunning and decisive victory. Afterward, Sitting Bull fled to Canada but returned to the United States in 1881, where he was granted a pardon. He later performed in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, but he never stopped advocating for his people. Sitting Bull was killed in 1890. But his legacy as a fierce protector of his people's land and culture lives on. Crazy Horse, another legendary Lakota warrior, devoted his life to defending his people's way of life. From a young age, Crazy Horse was known for his bravery and skill in battle. At just 20 years old, he led his first war party under the orders of Chief Red Cloud. In 1876, he played a crucial role in defeating General Crook at the Battle of the Rosebud, and later that year, he joined forces with Sitting Bull to defeat Custer at Little Bighorn. Despite his successes on the battlefield, Crazy Horse's resistance was ultimately in vain. By 1877, he was losing strength and support. That year, he was killed by a bayonet while attempting to reach his ailing wife. Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce is remembered not only for his leadership in battle but also for his eloquent and heartfelt speeches. Born in Oregon in 1840, Chief Joseph was the son of Joseph the Elder, a Christian convert who had sought peace with white settlers. However, when the U.S. government sought to remove the Nez Perce from their ancestral lands in Idaho, Chief Joseph led his people in a desperate attempt to flee to Canada. After months of fighting and hardship, in 1863, when the United States government took back the Nez Perce lands, Joseph the Younger's father made a defiant and symbolic gesture that would resonate for generations. Refusing to sign any more treaties with the U.S. government, he set fire to both his Bible and the American flag, rejecting the promises and faith he had once held onto. When Joseph the Younger took over as chief of the Nez Perce in 1871, after his father's passing, he found himself in an extremely delicate and painful position. He inherited not only the role of leader but also the weight of his father's defiance and the growing tension between his people and the U.S. government. The pressure mounted as the government sought to force the Nez Perce onto a smaller reservation in Idaho. For a time, Joseph tried to maintain peace. However, the inevitable conflict with white settlers and soldiers came to a head, and in 1877, the situation reached its breaking point. In one of the most remarkable military feats in Native American history, 700 Nez Perce warriors, led by Joseph, successfully held off 2,000 U.S. soldiers in a series of battles that stretched across the rugged terrain of the Pacific Northwest. Despite their determination, their numbers, and their skill, Joseph and his people could not hold out forever. After a grueling campaign marked by hunger, exhaustion, and loss, Joseph surrendered in 1877. His surrender speech, one of the most heart-wrenching moments in Native American history, echoed through the years. "I will fight no more forever." Defeated but not broken in spirit, Joseph lived the rest of his life advocating for the rights of his people, but his struggle would take its toll. In 1904, his physician reported that Chief Joseph died from what could only be described as a broken heart. He had watched as the lands of his ancestors were taken, and his people were reduced to poverty, their culture in danger of being erased. Macpialuta, better known as Red Cloud, spent most of his life fighting for his Oglala Lakota people. He rose to prominence during a time of great strife, not only against other native tribes like the Pawnee and Crow but later against white settlers and the U.S. military. By his 40s, Red Cloud had become one of the most formidable Native American leaders resisting the encroachment of settlers on native lands. His leadership during what became known as Red Cloud's War is legendary. From 1866 to 1868, Red Cloud and his warriors waged a successful campaign against U.S. forces in the northern plains, forcing them to abandon several forts along the Bozeman Trail, including Fort Phil Kearny. It was the only war in U.S. history where Native Americans forced the U.S. military to negotiate a peace treaty favorable to the native side. The Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868 granted the Lakota people vast territories, including the sacred Black Hills. But Red Cloud's victory was short-lived. When gold was discovered in the Black Hills, settlers flooded into the region, violating the treaty. The U.S. government, as it had done so many times before, reneged on its promises. Red Cloud, ever the pragmatic leader, sought to avoid further bloodshed. He turned to diplomacy, working with government agents to try and secure a lasting peace for his people. However, the encroachments continued, and the Lakota lost more and more of their land. Red Cloud spent his later years trying to protect his people's culture, but he also knew that the traditional way of life was under threat. He died in 1909, having witnessed the destruction of the world he had fought so hard to protect. Gall, another great Lakota leader, was among the most aggressive Native American chiefs in the fight against U.S. forces. A close ally of Sitting Bull, Gall played a crucial role in the Lakota's struggle for survival. At the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, Gall led a group of warriors that dealt a crushing blow to General George Armstrong Custer's 7th Cavalry. A victory that echoed across the plains. However, after the battle, tensions grew between Gall and Sitting Bull. While Sitting Bull fled to Canada to avoid retaliation, Gall chose to remain in the U.S., eventually making peace with the government. His decision was controversial among his people, some of whom believed he had compromised too much with the white authorities. Despite the criticism, Gall's efforts at diplomacy helped improve relations between the U.S. government and the Lakota, although many native leaders continued to resist. Paya Mataha, a lesser-known but equally important figure, was a Chickasaw diplomat who skillfully navigated the complex political landscape of the 18th century. Born in what is now Tennessee, Paya Mataha came of age during the time of constant warfare. The Chickasaw, often allied with the British, found themselves frequently at odds with the Choctaw, who were allied with the French. Paya Mataha distinguished himself as a warrior during these conflicts, but as he grew older, he realized that diplomacy might be a more effective tool for preserving his people's future. In 1763, when France ceded its North American territories to Britain and Spain after the 7 Years' War, Paya Mataha saw an opportunity. He forged new alliances with the Spanish and negotiated peace with the Choctaw and other native tribes, securing a period of relative stability for the Chickasaw. During the American Revolution, Paya Mataha's diplomatic skills were put to the test once again. While the British expected their Chickasaw allies to join the fight against the American colonists, Paya Mataha kept his people out of the conflict, preserving their independence and protecting their lands from further encroachment. After the war, he successfully negotiated an alliance with the newly formed United States, ensuring that the Chickasaw would maintain their sovereignty for years to come. Paya Mataha's legacy as a diplomat who prioritized peace and independence for his people remains a cornerstone of Chickasaw history. These stories, and many more like them, represent the countless Native American heroes whose contributions to history are often overlooked. From warriors like Crazy Horse and Tecumseh, who fought bravely to protect their people's lands and way of life, to diplomats like Paya Mataha and Red Cloud, who sought peace through negotiation, their legacies endure. Even today, the struggles faced by Native American communities are deeply rooted in the history of colonization, displacement, and resistance. But the resilience, strength, and leadership of figures like Chief Joseph, Red Cloud, Gall, and Paya Mataha continue to inspire. So, who among these influential Native American leaders do you think deserves more recognition today? Their stories are powerful reminders of the rich and often painful history of the Native American experience. And it's important that we continue to honor their contributions. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more episodes of Native Journal. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.